The day is ours. The few left alive have fled back south. New Phoenix has fallen. The frontier is now under Legion control. The North is secure. NCR has nowhere to run when the Butcher moves west. This is a complete and utter victory. I want to apologize, Courier. When you first came to me, I dismissed you as nothing more than a wasteland fable. But you've proven me wrong, again and again. It is because of you that everything you see is ours. I am a proud man, but I'm happy to say I was wrong about you. Thank you. Don't let this make you think we're friends, but it's a start. The road ahead of us will be difficult, as all things are, but now we can see the end. It's a new day, Courier. Let's see what we can do.
And so came to an end the Courier's exploits in the frontier. With the fall of Camp New Phoenix, there was nothing to stop the Legate, as he declared the frontier a Legion territory. Vindicated by his victory, Valerius was finally granted free reign over his dominion. He immediately instituted measures of reform. Under his rule, the Legion's dependence on slave labor was greatly diminished, and a choice few females were allowed to serve in the military. When told by Caesar to reverse these changes, Valerius declared himself Caesar, creating an eternal schism between the Northern and Southern Legion. Calidus continued to serve the Legate faithfully, acting as the Legate's political dagger to eliminate his enemies. Calidus would take advantage of the split from the main force to have a statue constructed in Joshua Graham's honor. The Malpace Legate would finally be rewarded for his service. As per Voss's plan, Prodigal Station went up in smoke not long after the Courier left. The robots of Underland perished with the station, their last thoughts being worry. They wondered whether or not the great Voss had made it out in time. The Courier chose to spare Voss, and, true to his word, he left the frontier, never to return. He would resume his experiments in a far-off, isolated section of the wastes, constantly striving to achieve the pinnacle of scientific progress. Years later, he received an invitation to join a group of scientists known as the Institute. Voss politely declined. Upon the fall of New Phoenix, all pretenses of Junkfleet being an independent holding were done away with. The slums were meticulously purged, and everyone else was given the choice of leaving or becoming a Legion citizen. Some resented the Legion for their overbearing governance and their harsh punishments. Others felt that the discipline they brought was long overdue. The slums of Junkfleet represented everything the Legion despised. It was no surprise, then, that when the Legion took over, drastic measures were taken. Bombs were detonated at the main entrance and exit to the slums, and concrete was poured into all other exits, trapping everyone inside. Those who didn't die of hunger suffocated. The Courier destroyed the Church of Eternal Life without mercy. Their traditions and beliefs would die with them. With the war over, Irvington was fully taken over by the Legion. It wasn't long before the Legionnaires began to grow sick and die. A few even mutated into horrific creatures. To stop the plague, Irvington was burned to the ground, with its citizens still inside. Salt Town continued to be prosperous, but some years after the war, mutated ants flooded out of the mine, destroying the town. Salt Town was soon abandoned, its ruins left to the ants. And so it came to an end, the Courier's magnum opus, a final adventure to the unknown. The road to Hoover Dam now lay before the Courier, an empty slate to be carved. Because war never changes.
It's done. Rancor's dead. And you have the Seafinder. There's nothing more for us to do here. I've already radioed for someone to pick us up and take us back to Portland. They'll be here shortly. It's up to you. I trust you'll know what to do with it. I've been hearing reports from all over of people seeing a large explosion in the sky and debris raining down everywhere. I'm guessing you blew up Archimedes too. I suppose that was the right thing to do. A weapon that powerful shouldn't be in anyone's hands. I don't know. It's none of my concern anymore. I won't be sticking around here for long. There's nothing here for me anymore. This place has taken everything from me. I just need to get away from here. Find a new place. Start a new beginning. Goodbye, courier. May you find solace in your travels.
And so came to an end the courier's exploits in the frontier. With Rancor and Blackthorn dead, and the NCR in complete disarray, much of the exiles disbanded. However, there were those who stayed behind. There were some who saw it as an opportunity to begin life as a vigilante peacekeeper, whilst others took the dark path and became the very thing they vowed to destroy. Whilst the airport was overrun by scavengers, they did not take up arms against the NCR civilians. Soon after, what remained of Goose Hollow became a town run by the scavs. It prospered, but would, on one fateful day, burn to the ground as Junkfleet's mayor sought to erase all traces of the exiles. Ashley Jane Terra, now one of the few remaining high-level members of the NCR exiles, found herself in an impossible situation. She was forced to either abandon the now splintered exiles, or rebuild them from the ground up. She took the chance to learn from Blackthorn's mistakes and began peacekeeping efforts. Though successful at first, she eventually found herself disillusioned by the endeavor and decided to leave the exiles entirely without notice, walking into a blizzard never to be seen again. Perhaps it was fate that resulted in Gray never seeing the day the exiles fell. He believed in the NCR, and as he stood in the cold, waiting for death, he never once faltered from what he thought was his duty. With Valerius dead and Ostia destroyed, the Northern Legion quickly disbanded. Most simply integrated into the native scav population, or used their fighting skill to form raider gangs. A choice few returned to the Legion fort, where Caesar had them put to the cross for their failure. As the war subsided, Junkfleet began to prosper. No longer relying on selling information on factions, they were able to begin more legal operations. Utilizing Junkfleet's water reservoirs and ample space, large swaths of the underground were turned into hydroponic areas. Though the courier would never meet the mayor would eventually become a very powerful figure, albeit from the shadows. As the threat of the war passed, the mayor could no longer tolerate the slums' lawlessness. The guards moved through the slums like fire, arresting or executing the worst of the criminals. The slums would still be considered dangerous, but they would never again be as toxic as they once were. With no guardian to protect them, the Church of Eternal Life was quickly wiped out by violent outsiders in search of their treasure. Irvington continued to prosper, even as more and more people began to grow sick. After years of suffering and dozens dead, Dr. Pavus finally created a cure for the disease. With the plague ended, Irvington would grow to rival Junkfleet in size and influence, becoming a beacon of civilization in Portland. Salt Town continued to be prosperous, but some years after the war, mutated ants flooded out of the mine, destroying the town. Salt Town was soon abandoned, its ruins left to the ants. And so it came to an end, the Courier's magnum opus, a final adventure to the unknown. The road to Hoover Dam now lay before the Courier, an empty slate to be carved. Because war never changes.
Hell calls Legate.
And so came to an end the Courier's exploits in the frontier. A decade of hatred, a 1,000-mile march, a rise to power. For Tasha Weaver, once Paladin of the Brotherhood, now Paladin of God. It all culminated in the frozen lands of the frontier. The NCR and Legion fell to the cleansing fire of energy weaponry. Their stalemate ended, their tyrannical war now only a fading stain on the land. The reign of the Crusaders began. Fire teams raided every cesspool of slavery and malfaction. A fetter of burnt flesh hung in the streets for days. Dozens of pre-war buildings became meal centers and shelters. Humanity found its second chance. But at what cost? For this question, the Domina had a simple answer. Evil is a festering wound left upon the world we inherited. Sometimes a finger must be removed to stop an infection from killing. Other times, an arm. What right do I have to do nothing, to let humanity die? But she who would be called the Lioness of the North dared not rest. Another dawn, another injustice to right. Giving a final glance to her tower, to her trusted allies, Weaver and a small detachment trekked towards the Puget Sound Naval Shipyard. Her plan? To salvage some pre-war battleships, to attack the California coast, to liberate all from the chains of NCR tyranny. While the frontier would never see Weaver again, tales of vengeful ghost ships from the north can still be heard at caravan campfires. Despite the best efforts of the Courier, Charlene did not survive the surgery. With Valerius dead and Ostia destroyed, the Northern Legion quickly disbanded. Most simply integrated into the native Scav population, or used their fighting skill to form raider gangs. A choice few returned to the Legion fort, where Caesar had them put to the cross for their failure. Irvington continued to prosper, even as more and more people began to grow sick. After years of suffering and dozens dead, Dr. Pavus finally created a cure for the disease. With the plague ended, Irvington would grow to rival Junkfleet in size and influence, becoming a beacon of civilization in Portland. Salt Town continued to be prosperous, but some years after the war, mutated ants flooded out of the mine, destroying the town. Salt Town was soon abandoned, its ruins left to the ants. America's internal doubt continued to push her away from everyone. Unable to resolve it, she grew distant, She didn't belong with the Crusaders. Maybe she didn't belong anywhere. She decided on her next scouting mission to disappear. No one would miss her. And so it came to an end. The Courier's magnum opus, a final adventure to the unknown. The road to Hoover Dam now lay before the Courier, an empty slate to be carved. Because war never changes.